Hello everyone, welcome to our PMP exam question and answer solving session for September. So just like the previous months, in today's session, we'll be solving some medium to high difficulty level PMP exam questions very similar to your actual exam. Also, if you have not watched the previous Q&A sessions, I would highly encourage you to check them out, okay? I am sure that you will find them immensely helpful for your PMP exam. I will link the entire playlist in the description section of this video. Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, you can use today's class to assess how well you are prepared for the exam, okay? So, out of the 5 questions that we'll be solving today, the target would be to get all the 5 out of 5 questions correct, okay? However, the minimum expectation is that you should get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for the PMP exam. Now, anything less than that, you might need a bit more preparation, okay? So give this video a like, get a pen and a paper, and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so the first question, guys, please read the question and try to answer it before we move forward. You can pause the video here if you wish to, okay? Right, so let's start solving the question together. The product development team is in the process of launching an online landing page on their existing website, fairlady.com, okay, to showcase their newly launched women's grooming product. The team reviewed some user testing data on the current website, okay, which is the existing website of this one, fairlady.com, and it has received a mixed feedback and inputs on the performance and user experience of fairlady.com. Which tool or technique should the product development team use in this scenario to identify the needs of the target audience? Okay, so basically this new landing page which is coming up, the team of fairlady.com need to ensure that it captures all the gaps and the improvement opportunities from the existing website. Okay, so brainstorming, benchmarking, focus group discussions, and market surveys. Okay, now to answer this question, guys, we'll follow the same principle that we have talked in this video. Okay, so we'll be cognizant about the positive bias principle and will not reject any option without solid reasoning. Okay, so let's start evaluating the options one by one. Brainstorming. Okay, now right, you can brainstorm within yourself, and generally brainstorming is done within a team, okay, or within a project team. But in the end, you need to understand that you need to collect some information from the users of the website. Okay, so that way brainstorming might not be a good approach to collect that information, because brainstorming will primarily be done in a group which forms of the members of the core project team. Okay, but in this scenario, you need to understand that the product development team needs to collect the information from some external entity who are the end users, right? So brainstorming is definitely incorrect. Benchmarking is also an incorrect option, guys, because generally you do benchmarking when you are benchmarking against a competition or a peer, right? So there is nothing of that sort which has been discussed in this scenario. Focus group discussion, that is a very good option, guys, because basically what you do in a focus group is that you collect all the users within a single meeting or in a room and discuss about what are their feedbacks in terms of getting the right kind of inputs to develop a product. Okay, and that information generally comes directly from the mouth of the customer, also sometimes called as the voice of the customer. Okay, market survey is also something very generic, guys, because generally market surveys are used to collect some very generic data which is done at the very onset of a project sometimes. Okay, but generally for this scenario, guys, focus group discussion is the best option, because that is the forum where you can get all the users in a single table and get the right kind of inputs which is needed to design the new landing page. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C, which is focus group discussions.
If you are preparing for your PMP exam, guys, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam prep courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated among students, and many PMP aspirants like you have passed their PMP exam with the help of these courses. All the links will be provided in the description section of this video. And now let's move on to question number 2.
Right. So question number 2, guys, please read the question and try to answer it before we solve it together. And again, you can pause the video here if you wish to. Right. So let's start solving the question together. During the implementation phase of a project, the product design team came up with some new requirements which were missed during product design. Okay. These requirements are mandatory for the client and would significantly impact sales and profits if not taken into consideration. Okay. Also, since these requirements were missed initially, this may now involve a major overhaul of the project scope and business case. Okay, so the three things to note here is this is a significant potential impact on the sales and profits, might involve a major overhaul of the project scope and also of the business case in the end. Okay, which action should be taken by the project manager? So let's start evaluating the options, keeping the positive bias principle in mind. Okay. Option A, perform a triple constraint analysis, which is an analysis of the cost, schedule, and scope of the project, keeping quality at the epicenter. Okay, so that way, if you are evaluating the impact of these additional requirements, it is a good step because it is the basic first step when you are evaluating a change request, okay, or a potential change in a project. So this option looks very promising to me. Okay, so let me hold this option for now. Option B, review the business case to check continued business justification of the project. Right. So this option is also very interesting, guys. Okay. And you know why? The question is mentioning that there might be a major overhaul of the project scope or the business case. Okay. Now you might argue that the project might not exist in the end. Okay. And you might need to shelve the project. What would happen if that case? Okay. So option B might be true, that you need to review the business case to check the continued business justification of the project. Okay. So let's hold this option as well. Review the project plan to identify risk responses. This is incorrect, guys. Okay, so you directly do not jump into identifying risk responses without doing a proper impact analysis. Correct. So if a proper impact analysis is not done, how will you identify which is the proper response? Okay, so that is why option C is incorrect. Option D, plan to fund an additional scope using the project contingency reserves. Okay, so this is also incorrect because without doing an impact analysis or without understanding where this change is going, you cannot just go and issue the contingency reserves to fund this additional scope. Okay, so that is against the change management principles. So option D is also incorrect. Right. Now if we come back to option A and B, guys, look very closely at option B. Okay, it is saying that we need to review the business case, which is okay, but you notice here that the question stem is saying that this may now involve a major overhaul. Notice this word may. Okay, it is not saying that this will now definitely involve a major project overhaul. Okay, now what is that thin line of difference between the may and the should? Right, the difference is the triple constraint analysis. As long as you have not done a good impact analysis, you will never be able to tell for certain whether this change will definitely involve the project business case to such an extent that you might decide to shelve the project in the end. Okay, so that way you are jumping a step and you are directly assuming that this change will cause an impact on the continued business justification of the project, which will be incorrect because as of now you have not done any triple constraint analysis on this issue. Okay, so the correct answer is option A.
If you're liking the video, guys, please press the like button. I know you have not done it, so please press the like button. It helps me to understand that you value such educational content and motivates me to prepare more such videos to help you with your PMP exam. And now let's move on to question number 3.
Question number 3, guys. The drill remains the same. Read the question and try to answer it yourself before we solve it together. Right, so let's start. You are the project manager for a housing development project, and it has been brought to your notice that one of your site supervisors is having some issues with the terms and conditions in the contract of the bricklaying contractor. Okay, so one of the activities is bricklaying. So you have a contract supporting that, and one of your site supervisors is having problems or issues with your supplier. Okay, Either of the two parties have not arrived at a resolution yet. What should be your first mode? Okay, very important. What should be your first mode of communication to resolve this conflict? Email, face-to-face conversation, telephonic conversation, or text message? Okay, now the funny thing is, guys, to answer such questions you need to know what is the PMP mandated hierarchy of communication channels. Okay, now if I just take a step forward and take you to the section of the PMBOK 7th edition which talks about this, you will be able to answer this question in less than 30 seconds. Okay, so read this snippet here, guys, where PMBOK 7th edition, I have mentioned the section here as well, talks about the importance of face-to-face communications over the communication channels such as notes, text messages, or let's say emails and telephonic conversations. Okay, so it is saying that richness in communication allows a broad spectrum of information to be conveyed rapidly. Okay, so that's okay. Situations that entail complex, complicated, and personal information benefit from richer communication channels such as face-to-face communication. Now, going back to the scenario, guys, this is a problem which is happening basis the contract which has been signed between your supplier and yourself, or with your team, right? Which is the bricklaying supplier here. So whenever there is such a problem basis a contract which has been signed between two parties, it falls in this complex category, right? It is not just a simple problem, let's say, of your contractor not performing up to the mark, or there is a bit of quality outage in one of the materials, etc., etc. There is some dispute with some of the clauses of the contract, so that is basically a complex issue which you need to solve. Okay, and going by the PMBOK mandated levels of hierarchy when it comes to communications, get this learning very clear, guys, that PMBOK always prefers face-to-face communication first over communications via emails or text messages or telephonic conversations. So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is face-to-face communication. Now you might argue that, okay, in my projects or in my company I do something very different. My company always prefers email communications before face-to-face communications. Probably my project management organization always promotes telephonic conversation. Those discussions are immaterial, guys. Okay, if you are writing the PMP exam and you are planning to pass the PMP exam with as much as correct answers as possible in the actual exam, you have to align by the PMBOK methods or the PMBOK philosophy. It is immaterial how in real world or how in your company you lead projects in a day-to-day routine. Okay, so this is a very important learning that you need to take out of this question, right? So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is face-to-face communication, and this is the first step, first mode, and the first most preferred communication type as per the Project Management Body of Knowledge 7th edition.
Make sure you subscribe to my channel PMP with Ray for more such videos for your PMP exam prep, okay? Your support really helps educational channels like this to grow on YouTube. And now let's move on to question number 4.
Okay, so question number 4, guys. The drill remains the same. Read the question and try to answer it before we solve it together. Right, so let's start. Some of your Agile team members have gone into unplanned leaves and a couple of your coders have called off sick. Okay, so very bad situation in your Agile team as far as resourcing is concerned. Since you are facing a severe resourcing issue, you decide to outsource some stories from the ongoing team to a freelance based technology firm. Okay, in the first sprint, the freelance team were not able to comprehend all the remaining user stories, okay, but were able to complete some of the most complex ones which were left off by your team. Okay, what should you do as a project manager in this situation to keep the progress on track for the project? And it has given you 4 options. So let's start evaluating the options one by one. Provide a new set of user stories to the freelance team. Okay, so that is incorrect, right? So you are already in a sprint, you are already in an iteration working with a set of user stories. Now giving a new set of user stories to this freelance team will not help you anyways to keep the iteration of the sprint on track and taking a step forward the project itself on track, right? So that option is incorrect. Let's look at option B. reprioritize the backlog to match the freelance team skills. Okay, now this is a very interesting one, because if you see here, the freelance team is already able to solve most of the complex items as part of story points which they have picked up in their sprint, right? So that way, clearly there is a shift in terms of the skill set of this freelance team versus your core agile team, right? So it makes perfect sense to reprioritize the backlog to match the freelance team skills. So for example, you can give all the complex story points with which your team was struggling to this freelance team and leave the other story points for your team when your resourcing issue is resolved. Okay, so this option captures that very well. So we'll park this option now. Okay, because as per the 4-step framework that we have learned in this video, we need to evaluate all the options first before we zero in on one option. Option C, hire additional team members within your agile team. This is random, guys, right? I hope none of you have selected this, because now going into another hiring cycle, HR will be involved, your project sponsor will be involved, it might need additional budget, etc., etc. Okay, not at all a realistic action plan. Okay, next, option D, work on developing a cost plus incentive fee contract for the freelance team. Okay, so funny thing is, you have already done the outsourcing, right? So this option is saying that after you have done the outsourcing, now you prepare the contract, right? So this doesn't make sense, right? So even if someone can argue that cost plus incentive fee contract is very suited for agile led projects which has an open scope, complex scope, etc., etc., it doesn't matter in this scenario, because you have already outsourced this to the freelance team, and that has to be based on some contract, right? You cannot outsource something without a contract. So this option might seem correct prima facie, but if you look into it very closely, you will see that this option is telling you that after you have done your outsourcing, then you go ahead and work on developing a contract. Okay, that is not in line with the basic principle of procurement, right? Because in a procurement, you have to have a contract first before you give out the job to a sub supplier or to a subcontractor or to a freelancing organization. Okay, so that is why option D is incorrect as well, and the correct answer to this question is option B.
I hope you are finding this exercise helpful, right? Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of 5 questions correct. However, the minimum expectation is to get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct, okay? So here comes the fifth and the final question.
Question number 5, guys. Please read the question. This is the scenario, this is the stem of the question, and choose an option from A, B, C, or D before we solve it together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's start. A project plans to develop a holiday resort in the Fiji Islands with 5-star state-of-the-art villas spread across 3 islands within a 5-kilometer radius. The contract for the design of the villas is ready for sign off. Note that this is the contract for the design of the villas, right? Not the construction of the villas, okay? And the design is about to start. Okay, so we are talking about a contract which is being planned in the design phase of the project. Okay, however, some ongoing geological and soil testing studies in one of the islands, which is Jade Island here, has highlighted a major ground subsidence risk in that island. Okay, now ground subsidence risk means, guys, that the risk of a construction going on top of that soil might have a risk of sinking down over time. Okay, and that might cause some minor damages, which is like cracks or dents in the building, or in a more extreme scenario, it can cause an entire building to collapse. Okay, hence the design of the villa, which was initially planned to be constructed on Jade Island, now needs complete redesign. Okay, now in the PMP exam, guys, you do not need any typical subjective knowledge. Okay, so for example, this question can be extrapolated to a civil engineering based knowledge. You don't need that, but at least you know the basic premise that there is some issue which has been identified with the soil testing report of the location where the villa is getting constructed, and for that it needs a complete redesign, because this new design doesn't take the new factor into account. Okay, that is enough for you to answer this question correctly. You need not to have any topic specific knowledge for any question in the PMP exam. What should the principal designer of the project do to manage this scenario effectively. Okay, so let's say the principal designer here is the project manager. Okay, so the client is the company who is constructing the villas, and you as a principal designer, you are the project manager designer who is actually designing the villas, and you need to take a decision now that with this new data point that has come with the soil testing report, how you should manage this scenario effectively. Okay, so let's look at the options. Go ahead with the design of the villas in Jade Island as planned and cover the risks via a design liability insurance. Now, this is a project management specific term, guys. So you need to understand what is a design liability insurance. Okay, so this design liability insurance is a classic example of a risk transfer. Okay, when a company does a design, and to mitigate the risks in that design, the design organization takes up an insurance. Okay, so for example, tomorrow if something goes wrong with the design, okay, and the company is fined, the insurance company will take up the fine on behalf of the company, and for that the insurance company will charge some premium to the company for, let's say, 5 years or 6 years till the design remains valid. Okay, now the thing is, for such a scenario where the ground subsidence risk has been identified and you are still asking an insurance company to provide you insurance versus the base design, this is not practicable, guys. Okay, no insurance company will want to insure such a design which has a big risk of ground subsidence which has not been mitigated effectively. So even if as a project manager you want to transfer that risk to an insurance company, no insurance company will be willing to take it up. So covering this risk is impossible for you, okay, via a design liability insurance. So design liability insurance always happens for a robust, effective, data driven, documented, and a design that follows the relevant standards of the industry or the country. Okay, so very important. So that way option A is incorrect. Option B, raise a change request to assess the impact of the ground subsidence risk. This part is okay. I am not debating this topic that you need to raise a change request to assess the impact. However, let's read the second part of this option, and pause design work till the change request gets approved. Okay, so this is incorrect, guys. Okay, because in the PMP exam, or let's say in the PMP philosophy, you should always go with an option which is not directly affecting the project schedule, okay, without mitigating the risks effectively. Here, basically what you are saying is, look, I will raise a change request, but I will put everything on hold till that gets approved. Okay, so this is not a PMP way of how a project manager should behave. Okay, so that is why this option B is also incorrect. Let's read option C. Plan the design for the rest of the villas as planned and plan the design of the villa in Jade Island with an agile based iteration. This looks like a good option to me, because what you are saying is for the first two islands you will go with the base plan or with the base design, and for Jade Island, you will do a agile based iteration where the scope will be exploratory, that you will start with the very simple design works such as interior design or the architectural design, which is not directly affected by the ground subsidence risk. Okay, so that way you are bifurcating the scope, that you are dealing with the simpler and much more defined scope items now till more data is available to you to make a future proof design. And this is a classic example of a exploratory scope of work, which is a agile based work in the end. Okay, so that way this option looks quite good to me. Let's look at option D. Hold back the design of the villa in Jade Island till the entire soil testing and geological assessment is complete. Okay, now this is also incorrect. Okay, because again it is saying that you need to hold back everything till you get all the parameters what you are looking for in line. Okay, now theoretically this might seem okay, but practically or from a PMP philosophy this is not okay, because effectively you are delaying the project where you could have progressed with the project with the scope items which were not directly impacted by the ground subsidence risk. Okay, so that way option D is also incorrect, and the correct answer to this question is option C.
So that's the end of the quiz, guys. Let me know in the comments below how much you were able to score, okay? I'd be very interested to know that. Also, if you have scored less, please do not be demotivated, okay? You just need a bit more preparation. Please make sure that you do a thorough analysis of your mistakes so that you get to know about your gaps. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next month with another session of PMP exam practice questions and answers.